Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing something very different from our normal LEGO reviews. This one is going to be a LEGO Star Wars book review over the new LEGO Star Wars The Force of Creativity for a whole $150. This book has received a lot of controversy based on that price because it is so expensive. There have already been reviews that have come out. Of course, I'm not the first one to this, but this is going to be a comprehensive review. So I have not just gotten this book and flipped through it. I have actually read it cover to cover. So I think that I can give a good review of the book itself as well as the other content. So I think for this we're going to review three categories, which is going to be the presentation, the extras, and then the book itself in terms of the content, and kind of give it a score after that. This is going to hopefully help some of you determine if this is something that you want to pick up or just totally pass on or maybe wait for a sale or who knows what. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll go over the presentation first. All right, everyone, here is the book itself. This is its, I guess, dust jacket of sorts. It's kind of a display box, but we get the UCS Millennium Falcon, as well as some embossed logoing there in the corner, LEGO Star Wars. And the Force of Creativity, which is the name of the book. You can see kind of like sparkling stars all along it. We have the same thing going on around the spine of the book, if you will. We have a UCS AT-AT on the back cover. This book opens up in the center, which I think is very luxurious or premium feeling. And we have the anniversary color scheme going on the inside. As you can tell, this is the top of the book itself, done in the UCS Star Destroyer in the same type of style. But I personally would have preferred to have the Millennium Falcon as the front, but that is totally just my opinion. There is a pull tab on the side that allows you to pick up the book as well as the time capsule without having to dig your nails in. So I really appreciate that. Taking a quick look at the book and you can see how shiny it is. I really like it. Same thing is done on the spine. And then on the back, we have the UCS R2-D2. As you can tell, there's lots of staining. I read this book from cover to cover, and despite me trying to take very good care of it, I could not, due to the matte material of this book, which I do think falls into this quality or appearance category. If you have any kind of grease on your body, which everybody does, can't see it there, the natural oils of your hands really come off on this book super badly. Not so much the covers, but you really see it in the pages, and I'll show that in just a moment. Book aside, and we do have the time capsule, and I really like how this stripe looks like it should just be paper and be removable, but it's like built in. I mean, this little time capsule thing is actually cardboard. You can store some things in there if you need, and it opens up like a book. It explains all the contents, and I have not opened this yet. I was waiting until I finished reading so that I could reward myself. Clearly, this piece keeps falling out, so I can reward myself with looking through these with you guys together. So that looks like instructions on how to build the cardboard, and we'll go into that in just a little bit. But I definitely like the feel of this box. It's nice and solid, and of course matches the display box. Here is the ribbon, and I love the opening double flaps. I'm not really sure, as this is advertised as a coffee table book, where you would put this part, because generally you don't display coffee table books in special boxes. So I'm not 100% sure there. But let's take a look really quick at the quality of the pages, because I think that falls into this category. So as I was saying before, the pages on this are very, very thick, and I really like them. And I'll go in more to detail on the contents of this, but the way that a lot of these pages are done is they leave behind oils. If you put like a thumbprint on there for too long, the oils of your hands do transfer onto the pages, and so it's really annoying because it does definitely look like it's used. You can see my fingerprints there a little bit. I will say the weight of the pages is extremely heavy for a paperweight. In terms of, if you're familiar with that, that basically just means like the quality of the paper is very, very thick. Every time I flipped over, I had to double check to make sure I didn't flip 2 pages. And that is probably going to be part of this expensive cost. I mean, we have a full black page that does not at all bleed onto this next white page. And so the paper thickness or the paper poundage on this is really, really quality. So I definitely give it to LEGO for that. Very quality in terms of appearance, initial appearance, the feel of the book, everything in that category feels like it is worth $150. All right, so the meat and potatoes of this review is obviously going to be about the contents of this book in here. And as I did mention earlier, I read this cover to cover. I didn't want to do this review and have only just glanced through, because I feel like that's how a lot of the initial reviews were actually presented. And while that is just fine, because we got a lot of highlights on the like cool content on here, I just wanted to give like the feel of the book as an overall concept. So we're paying a premium price basically for what's supposed to be like a really cool behind the scenes look at Lego Star Wars. And I don't consider myself like a know-it-all with Lego Star Wars. I don't know about all of the concept art and such that is out there, and like prototypes and stuff. I haven't really done a lot of looking into that, but I really do like the concept, the idea of how Lego Star Wars came to be, and that really is talked about in depth during this introduction. And I really like the discussion between like Lucasfilm as well as the Lego company. There is a really good amount of like Star Wars Lucasfilm concept art mixed in with like Lego images, so I really do appreciate that as well. And it does do a good explanation of the merger between the two, which I appreciate, and the idea that like Lego Star Wars had never been touched, and so trying to figure out like a good medium to display that with Lego I find very interesting, because I collected Lego when Lego Star Wars existed, and so I didn't know of the time before that really. And so it's very interesting to hear from those minds that like helped think it up. I liked the way they talked about the minifigures, and that was really neat and all. But like as we go about, and Lego does a great job on touching every, what do they call it? Oh yeah. Touching on every type of Lego Star Wars project that they've ever done, from Technic to buildable figures, to microfighters, to the Planet series, to the statues, to the helmet collection. I mean, they really touch on all of it and talk about the way that they basically pioneered those type of lines and stuff. And again, I really like that. We even get it to talk about animation as well as video game production, which I didn't think I would be as interested in, but literally the way this book is written is I was just able to jump into the Lego Star Wars universe anytime I picked up this book. It was very interesting. It was not a hard read to get through whatsoever. I found myself entertained the entire read, which is like 300 something pages. And I found myself like admiring the things that they were talking about. So for example, when they were talking about the video game section, I was like, they were talking about just the flagship that the Lego Star Wars video game was, which was just the prequel trilogy at the time, but like how advanced, and they didn't know if it was going to work. And I really liked that, because like I didn't even think about that. You know, I just picked it up and played it, and I didn't even realize that Lego games weren't very established when that game came out. I mean, I played it when it came out, and that actually led me to want to play it on my Game Boy, my original Game Boy. And I sadly found out that my left bumper button is broken, so I'm going to have to fix that. Same with the animation. They talked about the Revenge of the Brick, which was a short that I watched at the end of the Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars micro series. It was included on the DVD, and I thought it was so neat at the time that it came out. The animation on the faces was weird. They talked about that in the book. It actually made me want to watch it again. And so as I say that, it just kind of, every time they were talking about like the Technic figures and how cool some of the features were on them, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want this Technic figure. So Lego did a very good job in that aspect of like really highlighting the fun aspects of Lego Star Wars. And everything was very, I mean, it was very corporate talk, you know, having to use knobs as a term, and they kept using the term bespoke, and that really bugged me after a while. I get it a couple of times, but that was just their key. That was like their money word, was just bespoke. Everything was a bespoke part, and you just hear it a lot throughout the book, so it just kind of gets weird. Again, it did kind of give off like a corporate feel, like you could read this in like training to go work for Lego Star Wars, if that makes sense, because they just really are good about patting themselves on the back. Which, to say, I mean, it gave you a lot of inside information on like how Lego chooses to do things, and they know what the fans want, but sometimes as a company they're not able to produce what the fans want at that time. And I did glean a lot more respect for that in this book. But again, we're talking about the way that they present everything. Like, we heard nothing about Lego, you know, really close to failure during the time that they acquired Lego Star Wars, and how Lego Star Wars really saved the Lego company at the time. It really helped bring it out of what would become debt. And that was like a pivotal moment for the Lego group, and they don't talk about that at all. It's all, you know, sunshine and daisies. The Lego group was perfect. And I get, you know, not really wanting to talk about your failures, but I think that in the context of the importance of the Lego Star Wars merger, I think that that would have been interesting to touch on, because it does exist and the book does not talk about it at all. My main complaint with this book is the fact of the pictures. I think that the text and what was included was all good, but I think the big thing for me was we got a lot of talk about things that they were doing. Like, for example, in one of the pages, they were talking about creating the Darth Maul minifigure for the first time and how they had drawn up several different versions and then finally went with the one that we saw, and we saw no concept pictures of that. And so I'm kind of like, many times during this read, I'm left wondering, I wonder what that looks like. You know, we get lots of pictures of released Lego sets that most of us own, and I don't really want to pay $150 to see a picture of a Lego set that I own. I don't think that there should have been any of that type of inclusion. I like to see the Lucasfilm concept art. I like to see the Lego Star Wars concept art, and then I think we should have seen like more prototype and unreleased pictures. And they talked about it a lot, but they didn't publish very many of those things, and I think that that hurts the book overall, because if we're paying for this $150 premium reading experience about Lego Star Wars, I would think that we would see a whole lot more pictures of things that we've never seen before. And we can't use the argument that Lego doesn't take pictures, because we know that they do. They talk about it abundantly in this book. And so I think that that would have been a lot more interesting to see. That's probably my biggest gripe of this book. And I think that that's kind of a common theme amongst everybody else who has reviewed this book, is the images, especially of sets that we've already seen, is just really boring. You know, I mean, we can get a Lego visual dictionary for that, you know, and while that has a place, I don't think that it was in this cool, super mega large Lego collector's guide, if that makes sense. I also didn't see a lot of purpose for the index at the back where it shows every Lego Star Wars set ever, because it is immediately now outdated and there are no pictures to accompany it. So for me, it doesn't hold a lot of value, because Bricklink can do the same thing with in-depth images. And so I don't really know if they were just trying to make a page count, but I didn't really personally like that. My favorite section was probably the video game and Lego animation section. I don't know why. I wasn't expecting it, but I just learned so many things as they were talking about it. Like, just to go back in retrospect and talk about like how they didn't think that a Lego face would convey well in screen, and so they felt like they needed to give them weird animated faces, was something I never thought about. So I really liked those things. I think that I learned the most from that section, and in the part that I was kind of almost glazing over was basically the fan creations. And while they are amazing and awesome, I've just seen a lot of them. You know, we have access to the internet, and so I think it's great that they highlighted on the fan creations, and super cool if you know, you got your fan creation in this book. That's amazing. But that's just something that like we can find online anywhere and see, and we have seen a lot of those before. And so to me, I don't think that it should have been included. I understand the purpose of it, because the whole theme of the book is that, you know, Lego Star Wars, you can be super creative. And we know that because that's like Lego's tagline. And so that's why I said it feels almost like a corporate read in that way, because it just keeps going back to these main talking points of Lego, like they're having to sell it to us, even though we just bought a $150 book. And so, that being said, I totally understand why it's in there, but for me, reading it was a little bit boring because it didn't offer anything like never before seen, if that makes sense. And then the big downside to me was the images that they chose to include in these books. I mean, we did get like full spreads of images that we have seen before, in terms of like Lego sets that exist that, you know, I own. I don't care to see that. And I found that like just not great. And so I definitely think that drops the price of the value of this book, drops it down. I hope that you guys found that helpful. I did the best that I could to try to like review the contents without reading it page by page for you. So hopefully you found that interesting, and hopefully I made sense. I honestly, I can't tell you if I would read this again anytime soon. It's sort of one of those, you read it and you're like, oh, that's nice, and then you set it down. I mean, I suppose that's the gist of a coffee table book, but I don't know about the reread value really being there, which I think overall does hurt the $150 price point of this book in terms of the contents. Arguably, the most interesting part of the Force of Creativity is going to be the time capsule that includes a whole bunch of fun, quote, exclusive items that are pretty decent. We'll go ahead and take a closer look at them. Our first piece to talk about is the original Lego Star Wars logo. This is done on the back of a postcard. which has been talked about as being an interesting choice, but postcards are still relatively popular, even though they are not often sent these days. I think that this is better than just having it on a piece of cardstock. I don't know, but it looks pretty cool. You can definitely tell this was an early version. Leia looks very wrong. There's a lot going on in the background, but I also really like the way that especially the Sith look kind of Kubrick-esque. Definitely not Lego-esque. Lego had not quite found that Lego Star Wars style that they talk so heavily about in the introduction and the beginning sections of the book. So we do get this little nice piece. I can definitely see somebody framing this and installing it in their collection. It's a nice little thing. Next up, we get the Toy Fair invitation from 1999. This is the 25th anniversary edition. They definitely had to make it sound different. I did a hyperlapse on this, putting it together, and I'm not particularly pleased with the way that it goes together. It doesn't require tape, which is really nice, but it just doesn't seem super sturdy to me. It like slips and slides. I don't know if you can really tell, but here it is. This is based on that very expensive, basically info pack that they sent out to like toy reporters and for, you know, the first toy fair that Lego brought Star Wars to. And so this is a replica box. Obviously, we don't get real minifigures. Get the elephant out of the room. There are no minifigures in this, and perhaps there should have been at least one exclusive minifigure, but we won't get into it because I think it's been addressed a lot. Here we are. It says building a new galaxy in 1999, and you basically put it together. It was a little bit frustrating to put together, but it gives you all the information at the bottom. And I do like that the cardboard is nice and stiff and polished in terms of it stays together without tape. It just kind of slides because it is polished. And I like that it's got a little cutout. You can actually see what they were trying to convey better in this box than you can in the original, though obviously it is not as cool. There's no sound, there's no real minifigures. But I really think that this was a very good, so you can see it sliding out. I didn't build it very good. It's a great homage to the original. I think this was something that was very smart for Lego to include in their box because it's a fun buildable, albeit kind of frustrating. It's definitely not the hardest thing in the world to build, but it might make you frustrated if you are not used to building boxes. On the back, we also have some art that is just like the original. And it does bother me the way that this top comes down because if you squeeze it together, it lines back up. That's just probably going to be a flaw. But nonetheless, I think this is probably one of the coolest inclusions in this book for the time capsule. Next up, we have the pencil sketch for print advertisement from 1999. And I will say this is absolutely something that you could frame to add to your collection. It is printed on very thick paper, and so it definitely has a premium quality feel. I like this advertisement. They talk about it a little bit in the book and how cool that they thought it was. And so if you're opening this time capsule without really having read the book, you're not going to have the same appreciation as if you open it after the fact. That is my opinion because I've read the book and I'm seeing these things and I'm like, oh, that's why they included it. That's why they included it. This was something that is not necessarily random. It was talked about, and I love that it's a print of a concept drawing. I really like this. The paper quality on it is super nice. This is another great piece, in my opinion, for something like this. Here we have the development art for hologram micro figures in 2009. Another thing addressed in the book, another type of concept art that Lego Star Wars fans have not been very privy to until now, and it is done again on the same weight of paper as the Darth Vader sketch, and it looks really cool. Definitely something worth framing because it is very, very Lego and very unique because they didn't make 2 of the 4 of these. So again, I think this is a wonderful inclusion. It's not talked about too much. It is a little blurb in the book, but I think it goes without saying that even without reading this through, this is a really cool piece. Here is a facsimile of the Toy Fair booklet done in 2010. And I think that this looks really nice. Obviously, if you have the 2010 version of this book that's worth like $1,000, this might be like trash to you. But as a collector that doesn't have anything like this, I think it's really fun. It's super cool. I don't actually even want to crease it because I think it's really nice. I remember when Lego did this and I loved it and I wish they'd bring it back. It's funny because in the book they talk fondly about doing this. So why don't they bring it back? I don't know. But this book is a really, really cool edition because you can flip through it and basically get a feel for what Lego Star Wars was like back in 2010. If you did not experience it for yourself, you can kind of get the feel of what the Lego group was going for. So I do appreciate that. I love the Darth Vader on the front. It is obviously not as premium as the original, but of course we can't expect that because that would, for one, devalue the original, and number 2, raise the price of this book. So it is a facsimile, and I think that that's just fine. I really like it. Next up, we have 2015 instructions for the Lego micro ghost build. This is apparently the first time that these instructions have been made public. This was during Celebration Anaheim. It was a make and take event from the Lego booth. And so I guess it's nice that now you can go through and build a micro ghost. I don't know, the instructions definitely don't feel as quality as the other paper that was printed on, which is fine. Maybe a strange inclusion. They do talk about like the micro builds quite a bit, and like Lego's involvement in like fan events like Celebration, and then, you know, also talking about Toy Fair. So I see where they put this in, but I definitely would have preferred it to be substituted with something else. But I also like the idea that you can go dig in your bucket and build this if you have extra Lego pieces, which is like Lego's whole thing. So I see why they included it, but me personally, it's not amongst my favorite. I would have liked to see it substituted maybe for something else. I'm really a big fan of the prints, so I would have liked to see another one of those. This is the unproduced script for the Lego Star Wars Tonight Show back from 2016. This was basically a Lego short that got cut. It never made it into production. This particular inclusion got a lot of hate, I think, initially from people reviewing this book. But if you read the whole section over the animation, it makes a lot of sense why they included it. They talked about this and how they ended up scrapping the idea. And this was one of the things I complained about in terms of the book, is that they would talk about something but not show any pictures of it. And you're like, I wonder what that was like. Well, here is something where we saw some pictures about, like, some concept art regarding the Star Wars Tonight Show, if you will. And this is a unreleased script of that. So if you wanted to look into the actual script, if you were interested in the film section of the Lego book that we have here, I think that that's a fun inclusion. It's not for everybody, for sure. It's kind of niche in of its own other items, but I really like the thoughtfulness that they would include a draft so you can read what would have been a short for Lego Star Wars, because it takes up such a large section of the book. That whole animation section. I really like this. The 2019 unreleased Star Destroyer poster, I think, is the weakest item in the time capsule. It is printed on nice paper. It makes a great frameable item, but they call it unreleased. It was on the side or on the inside panel of the UCS box. But of course, unless you want to rip apart your box, you don't have a way to display this. So it's a fantastic shot. In the book, they go over in detail how difficult to get this actual shot that it was. This was the last set that they actually took photography of, which is very special. But they talked about how Lucasfilm helped them with understanding how to light the Star Destroyer in the correct way, and how much of a pain it was to like shoot it from the underside, but they did it. So I appreciate that they included that, because it was a large section of the book, and I guess now you have it in poster form, even though it's not something that we've never seen before. So I don't know, to me that kind of makes it the weakest. These are the 2020 development from the video game Zam Wessel. So they've almost included an item from every section of this book, and I really appreciate that. But I think overall, this one looks super, super good. Unfortunately, I don't know if we're ever going to get an updated Zam Wessel. I hope so, but this was updated for the video game. A lot of people thought this was an unreleased minifigure, but it was not. Again, a super frameable item. It is done on nice, thick paper. I think this is a great inclusion. I would have liked to see more of these, even if they were not actual minifigures, just to see more of this. I would have liked to see more of this in the book in general. This was very small, like little blurb up at the top of one of the pages. So it's really cool to get a frameable version of this. And it is one of my favorite things. Then we have the 2023 instructions for the Lego Lucasfilm Yoda Fountain employee gift. This is one of the weaker things to me. Again, when it comes with instructions, I see how they could do it, because now you can make this if you want. And I do appreciate the instructions, but the piece count that you need is already on Bricklink if you go and search up this set. And I don't think that it is that difficult to put together. But it does give you step-by-step instructions, which is really cool. And there is absolutely nothing exclusive about this set, so you can make it yourself. They did make a note that the legs on Yoda are amended on this version. They were actually different on the authentic release of this, but you can still get those minifigure legs if you want to make it authentic. But it's kind of cool to have an instruction book, but again, it's one of the weaker elements to me, because you can kind of just do it off of Bricklink if you want. And so I think that something cooler could have maybe taken this spot. Overall, I really like the presentation of this time capsule. We unfortunately don't receive any Lego minifigures, but I think what we do get is pretty quality. I would argue we don't need a minifigure with this book, which is probably what the Lego group was thinking when they did this, because everything inside relates directly to the content that you're reading. And obviously we get minifigures with everything anyway. I like that it explained every single item that you get, but you're going to get more value out of this if you read the whole book and then take a look at these items. You of course could do it in whatever order you want, but overall I think that that adds an enhancement to the time capsule, and it's also kind of a treat for finishing the book. You can like look through those things and be like, oh, I remember reading about that. That's how I was, at least. Anyways, guys, that is the review of the LEGO Star Wars The Force of Creativity. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you found it informative. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I will catch you guys in the next one.